Hello, everyone, and welcome. The sports writers are here from the Salem News and the Gloucester Times. Phil Stacy, Matt Williams, Nick Giannino, all from the Salem News, Nick Kukuru from the Gloucester Times. I'm Bill Newell with MSO News Sports. Welcome. So as we begin this podcast this week, I thought we could just review very quickly a couple of notes from last weekend, but looking ahead to this weekend all at the same time with the games. And in that NEC Dunn division, the top division, Marblehead, Swampscott, both undefeated, both 2-0 within conference play. Masco right behind with a 2-1 conference record, 6-1 overall, but some interesting games coming up this weekend. Important games coming up this weekend on that front. So, Phil, I'm going to call on you to start us off here because I mentioned Swampscott. I did not just mention Beverly, but Swampscott I just mentioned, and you were at the Swampscott Beverly game, and a game that Swampscott won 13-12. I was impressed by that score because if you figured Swampscott was going to win that game, you'd say 35-28 or 35 to something, but it was 13-12. So, and I know that was a good chance for you. I think the first time for you to see Swampscott this year. So
it was, yeah. And also, I gotta say, very disappointed to see Tim wearing pants that day. I mean, come on,
Tim Kearns.
Tim Kearns, I mean.
Oh my gosh.
October. Yeah, it was a shocking revelation, to say the least. But I digress.
Well, let's just clarify this for the first time viewers here. You're talking about he was wearing shorts, as we refer to them, short pants.
No,
but he was wearing pants. Oh no, I'm sorry. He was wearing long pants, but opposed to shorts, so he was wearing pants. Normally he will show up in pants, but short pants.
I believe the kids call them sweatpants. Yes.
Okay.
Which I deemed unacceptable in October, but that's neither here nor there. It was my first time seeing Swampscott. Actually, no, I take that back. I Swampscott the previous week. I saw Swampscott against Danvers.
Yeah.
And you're right. You would think that it would have been a higher scoring game, but they were playing with their backup quarterback, Zach Ryan, in place of Cam O'Brien, who had to sit out a week for his targeting call the week before. So I think that, they came in with a very definite game plan to keep it simple. Get the ball in their playmakers' hands. Don't try to do too much. 4 or 5 basic plays, passing plays out of their expansive playbook. And, don't beat themselves kind of thing. I think it worked out exactly the way that they hoped in terms of checking off all of those boxes. Even after Beverly got out to a 12-0 lead in the second quarter, Swampscott kind of stayed the course. They gave the ball to Xavier Bascon quite a bit, 29 carries, finished with 177 yards and a score. And they just wore Beverly down, especially in that second half. I thought they kept the ball for a long, long time. Even though they did not score, they ate, I think it was 9.5 minutes off the clock in the third quarter. They kept it for more than 5 minutes to start the fourth quarter. By the time Beverly got the ball back with a little more than 6 minutes to go, they had to drive the length of the field. And they tried to eat up as much clock as they could, not to give Swampscott the ball back. They get it down inside the 3 or 4 yard line, I want to say, with 2 seconds left. They try a field goal. Bascon blocks it. Tough game for Beverly in the sense that they missed both extra points and they had the field goal blocked. Any one of those connects and you either win or at the very least you go to overtime. So a disappointing result for Beverly, the second 1-point loss of the year. I get the sense they feel like they not only could be 5-2, but they should be 5-2. But hey, as the famous coach once said, you are what you are. And Swampscott is the team that won. They're 7-0. Now another big matchup this week with Masconomet, which Nino, I know you've seen recently. And they're playing very well. I mean, that should be a great game. 7-0, Swampscott 6-1, Masconomet. Beverly looks like they should be okay for a playoff spot. I mean, hey, I'm not Stephen Hawking. I can't figure out all the math ahead of time, but they're seated 12th right now. You figure they're going to beat Gloucester this weekend, 1-6 Gloucester. I suppose you don't take anything for granted, but you should. I would assume that they will win that game. That would put them at 4-4. And although they could technically drop in the standings because of, power seeding and Gloucester's only got the 1 win and it's a lower division and all that, I wouldn't expect them to drop out of the top 16. Still, as Coach Hutton said after the game, you don't want to be seeds 13, 14, 15 to 16 in that Division II draw, because you've got some super heavyweights there. With the heaviest weight of all in the state, Catholic Memorial will be the #1 seed. So you definitely don't want to have the #16 seed. So every week we seem to have interesting variations and variables, I should say, as opposed to, whether you win or lose, or how your opponent did or whatnot, and the carryover effects will continue right up until the seeding next week. So interesting ramifications for both teams based on that 1-point Swampscott win last Saturday.
Hey,
Swampscott.
Matt, I was just gonna call on you, Matt, but I want you to also elaborate on Bascon, because I know you were touting him a few weeks ago. Maybe talk a little bit about it. He made the big play defensively, but now they're hosting Masco, as Phil just mentioned.
Oh, the tribal chief. I mean, he's got his lay on after the game. He's having a great time. I bought stock in X early. Last year in fall too. He was my future star, household name by the end of the season. And he kind of maybe didn't make that because Swampscott lost like 4 games. But what a beast. I mean, just finally actually getting to carry the ball 20 or 25 times a game and making it happen out there. I think if you're Swampscott, you almost wonder, like, if we almost gave this game away. I mean, they went for it on 4th down deep in Beverly territory a couple times. Maybe, should have kicked a field goal with Aiden Wolf once or twice to make sure that they didn't need that field goal block at the end of the game to win, right? I mean, they probably left some points on the table, Swampscott did. And I think against teams like, and this is no shade at Beverly, but against teams like Masconomet and Marblehead, you going to convert those drives. You're not going to have that fortune go your way again if you want to keep winning games. And I think this Swampscott Masco game is sneaky exciting. I mean, first of all, if Swampscott wins, you set up undefeated versus undefeated on Thanksgiving for the league title, potentially 2 teams that are going to the Super Bowl at that stage, right? I mean, assuming Marblehead takes care of Danvers this week. And so there's that. And just 2 physical teams. I mean, are there 2 more? I mean, outside of the Catholics, are there 2 more physical runners in our area than Matt Nadwarney and Xavier Baskin? And I mean, they're going to be going head to head for 4 quarters on Friday night. I mean, that's going to be rock'em sock'em football, so to speak.
I will say one thing, and I've only seen Masco once this season, and at ground level, I love watching from the field, but I think sometimes when you're in the press box up high, you do get a different view. And what I noticed with Bascon the last 2 weeks, you can't arm tackle him. You don't want to arm tackle anybody, obviously, but he's somebody that's just going to shed those would-be tackles easily. And I think it's because he has not only terrific speed moving forward, but east-west, he can pivot on a dime. He gets through holes that the linemen create up front, and he's just going to shuck those tackles and really gain yardage after the fact. I do think Nadworthy's a similar runner, but I noticed it especially with Bascon these past 2 weeks.
Oh, he's incredible. I can't tell you how many times against Peabody, he ran into the defensive lineman and used his ballerina feet to just take 2 steps the other way. They couldn't wrap their hands around his ankles fast enough. And before you can blink an eye, he's at the sideline galloping for more yardage. I mean, he's a special one, and it's nice to see. And, his brother was really good for Swampscott, and it turns out his dad played down in Stoughton, and he had a 300-yard rushing game on Thanksgiving. Now, I thought Malik Van Alstine was the only person alive who ever ran for 300 yards on Thanksgiving, but I guess it happened on the South Shore with Father Bascon down there.
Now, here's a trivia question for each of you. Willie mentioned that Xavier wears the lei after games, heritage, Hawaiian. Can you tell me what island his family originates from? Which Hawaiian island?
Well, I can't answer that. I conducted the interview, so I'll leave it. It would be unfair for me to answer.
Oh, you know the answer. Okay. So
yeah, I don't.
Is the island of Maui.
Maui, okay.
Maui, yes. Where many moons ago, Mrs. Stacy and I went a couple of years, and I told him, and I would say this to you guys, I'd go back there tomorrow if you give me a plane ticket. Drop everything and go. It's that nice there. So, hey, quickly before we move on, speaking of running backs, I think we need to talk about Carson Brown, what he did at St. John's Prep Friday night. not at the prep, but for the prep at BC High. I think anybody who listens to the podcast knows James Guy is the main piston in that prep backfield, has been for 3 years now. He got dinged up in their loss to Catholic Memorial a week and a half ago. Carson Brown stepped into that game, ran hard. I think he had 55 yards on 9 carries, excuse me. Starts against BC High on this past Friday night down in Dorchester. Rushes for 277 yards on, what did he have, 30-something carries, 34 carries, I want to say off the top of my head. I mean, now granted, St. John's Prep has the depth. They have excellent backups as well as starters. Their line is massive. Those guys do a great job. But 277 yards for a backup is still 277 yards. And I mean, it wasn't anything fancy. It's just straight ahead, put your head down, move the pile, follow your blockers, use your speed, get to the outside, make things happen. Terrific performance from the Peabody native. Boy, you want to talk about churning out great ball players. There's another one there in the prep pipeline. Really, really impressed with what Carson Brown did Friday night.
And didn't we this year, Phil and guys, didn't the first weekend or maybe the first and second weekend, we did not have in the Salem news coverage area a 100-yard rusher altogether for any team, right? At least the first weekend we did.
I think that was right. I mean, I think like within the first 2 weeks, we might have only had like 2 100-yard runners and all. But I think as the weather's starting to turn a little bit, we're seeing more teams, rely on their ball carriers and try to pound out those tough yards. Not that they're not passing. I mean, the prep still threw 4 touchdown passes the other night, but they are leaning more in those bell cow ground game guys to move the chain.
Nick Giannino, do you want to weigh in on any football notes from the last weekend at all, or looking ahead to this week? Weigh in on a game?
I was at the Masco game, as you mentioned earlier. I saw them now 3 weeks in a row. Got them against Danvers this week, and they looked pretty dominant. I know Danvers was down, one of their key players in Colin Kelter, but Masco really knew what Danvers wanted to do offensively. They run that wing T and they ground and pound, and Masco was ready for it. They put 5 in the box. They kind of got after, the runners at the line of scrimmage. And then when Travis Voisin did, drop back the pass, they were bringing the blitz. They were ready for it. So impressive win for Masco. I thought Danvers made it competitive towards the end. The score ended up being a 2-score game, but really Masco was in control the entirety of it. And we mentioned Nadwerney, he actually went down on his first run of the game. I think he ripped off like a 12-yard gain, and it would have been a lot more, but he fell on his own. It was a non-contact injury, and it looked pretty serious. It was like kind of a lower leg, but he ended up returning later in the game, which was great to see. I know Gavin Monagle, the head coach, was saying how he couldn't believe he came back, but you wouldn't even know he got hurt. He looked fine coming back in, so that was great to see. And I think comparing him to Bascone is pretty accurate. I like the way Matt Nadwerney runs. He's got that extra gear, that extra burst of speed, and that was on display. Obviously, his brother's a good runner as well, Sam, the sophomore there. So Masco's looking pretty good, and I think that connection between quarterback Matt Richardson and Owen Barrett is just getting better each week. They're really finding some things there, and Monagle's allowing them to kind of improvise sometimes on plays and do their own thing out there. And Barrett's got good speed. He's been beating a lot of guys in the secondary there. So that's another weapon for them to have. And then on the other side, I was really impressed. I mentioned they didn't have Colin Kelter. I was really impressed with Max Gazanowski. He kind of does a little bit of everything for them, and they let him loose there in the second half. And he ran some quarterback. He had some great runs. I think he caught a pass or two. He was pretty solid on defense. So that's a positive for Danvers moving forward. I think they're probably a little better than their record suggests, but they've just had some tough weeks lately.
Well, let's hop up to Nick Kukuru there in the Cape Ann area, Manchester, Essex, Gloucester. What can you share with us?
Yeah, I actually had the rare week off from football. Willie covered Gloucester Peabody Friday, and Manchester Essex had a bye. They got a big one against Lowell Catholic coming up Friday. Lowell Catholic's 5-2, so that would be a big win for them. I know after they beat Minuteman by 70, they went down 6 points in the rankings because Minuteman doesn't have very many wins. So, it might be a good chance to move up a few if they can beat Lowell Catholic on Friday. As far as Gloucester's concerned, I mean, they fall to 1-6. Sounded like, from reading Willie's game story, it was kind of the same old story for Gloucester. I mean, they have trouble keeping up with those NEC large teams. And then, offensively do a couple good things, but they can't stop the turnovers. And that's kind of been their MO all season. It's kind of put them behind the 8 ball in a lot of games this season, especially against those NEC North teams. Swampscott kind of sounded pretty similar to that Swampscott game. I think that was 42-0 at the half. This one was 35-0 at the half. So, but yeah, they have Beverly this week. And I kind of have to agree with Phil that you could kind of pencil that one in for Beverly barring something catastrophic happening, but that should be a mismatch.
Maybe we can rely on what happened last week and so on, but I want to talk about the, looks like in the Cape Ann League, Friday night, Hamilton Wenham at North Reading looks to be like one of the key games of the week coming up this weekend in the Cape Ann League, with Hamilton Wenham continuing their winning ways.
And they're scoring a ton. Willie, I think you wrote about it, but after those first 3 games, what they scored 13 points, 14 points in each of those first 3 games. And now they've scored like over 35 in the last 3. So their offense is really starting to click, which is, obviously huge because their defense has been strong all season.
Right. No, I mean, yeah, they're scoring points, and I think, really settling in with John Ertel there at quarterback and Marcus Norton on the outside. I mean, they kind of had gone back and forth at quarterback the first few weeks, and I think now settling into one role is really help them. Norton's an incredible receiver. He's got those ups from basketball. He can go up and moss people to take down catches. And I think, the offensive line's playing better. And I think both Damaraki brothers, I mean, they just, as we've been over, they only practiced last year, weren't able to play. And I think I saw them in week 2 against Watertown, and then I saw them this past Saturday, and the difference in their vision as they run, I mean, I think it's just a matter of getting those carries under their belts. They're seeing the holes. The holes are a little bit bigger. The line's playing better. Jackson Doobie, Jackson Courtney, the seniors out there. Tim Seward's a name we're going to hear a lot over the next 2 years. He's a junior. He's a 3-year starter already as a junior on the offensive line. So he's a big part of what Hamilton Wenham does. But I think the brothers are just seeing the holes so much better. I think, when you play running back, it just, the more reps you have, the more you can sort of see those creases develop, and they're just running with so much better vision than they were early in the season. And it's leading to big points. And of course, the good thing for Hamilton, it's these games where they're scoring a lot of points. They're not shootouts. They're still playing that same great defense they were in the first few weeks. And now they've added the offense to it, and they're a real dangerous team.
We were saying it's too bad Masco isn't still in the cow because, obviously that would be a good matchup there. But it seems like Masco's a better fit in the NEC, so that seems to be the right move.
Yeah, some of these teams, Hamilton's dropping 50 burgers on. I think Masco would probably, that's a good thing they moved over. I think finally,
50 burger is an excellent description, Willie.
You mentioned brothers again, you guys, and I think that's come up twice here today. But here's one to throw out, and maybe we don't have to respond to it this week. But what are the best, historically the best brother combinations in North Shore football over the years? I mean, you know what I'm saying? Who are these? Who would be the best, combinations of brothers in North Shore high school football?
Well, so it's interesting, Bill. We'd have to think about that, because are we talking about just families in general, right? Or people that had to have played together on the very same team? In other words, like you could have had a brother that graduated in, say, 2000, and his little brother didn't come up until 2007 or 8. Like, for instance, the Bunkers at Masco, I don't think ever actually played together, right? Now, they're great brothers, but they weren't on the same team, whereas the Nadwornies are closer in age. So you kind of have to decide your criteria there a little bit, I think, to narrow it down.
The Coppola triplets at St. John's Prep played together.
Yeah.
Outstanding players.
I think we ought to have it as the played at the same time. But but you also have.
I don't know if the Millett brothers at Marblehead ever overlapped. They seem to kind of all play at different times.
I'm reminded of the story. I think who it was that back in the old days when baseball players used to have roommates, this guy used to tout that he was, that he and his roommate had the highest home run totals of any roommate combination, but it was Hank Aaron and some other journeyman catcher or something or other that were roommates or something like that. But anyways, that aside,
weren't there two brothers on that Acton Boxborough team that won however many games in a row? Would they go
Yes.
undefeated for 4 straight seasons or something?
Yeah, that's a state record. It started with an L. I think it was like LaBerge or LaBarra or something like that. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Good Nino with the knowledge. I can't believe he pulled it out of his hat.
I know my history.
I don't know if they're brothers at the same time, but former Gloucester coach Tony's him and his 2 brothers all were captains and played on a Super Bowl winning team at some point. I know the 2 youngers played. I don't think Chris and Tony started at the same time, but they were on the roster at the same time. One was a freshman, one was a senior. But pretty interesting factoid. They were all captains on Super Bowl winning teams.
Hey, let's just jump to some other sports here. Willie, I know you got a call to do some more volleyball on the podcast, right? I noticed I'm gonna just chip in what I have, and that is Fenwick beat Danvers, I know, over the weekend by a 3-1 margin. So the defending Danvers state champion Falcons, whatever, right?
It's been a great season in the NEC. I mean, Danvers is sort of fallen back to the pack, notwithstanding. I think Beverly, we're gonna have a lot of tournament teams. Beverly's playing really, really well. I think Peabody is clinched the North title. Now I'm not sure exactly what the divisions are for the Dunn and the Lynch in volleyball, because I'm not sure if Marblehead is in the smaller one or the bigger one, but they're a really good team. Masconomet's a really good team. And the fun thing for volleyball too, the Cape Ann League is having some real great success. They're going to get a lot of points in the ratings. I know Hamilton Wenham beat Beverly this past week, and they played each other twice and went 1-1. That's awesome for them. And Ipswich actually beat Marblehead, which is a great win for Ipswich. I think they're 14 or 15-1. So you got to imagine they're going to be one of the top seeds in their division. Ipswich is. So we've got some teams in the volleyball that could go really far in the state tournament, and that's going to be great to see. I think,
And Essex Tech, they got a good season going too.
Yeah, it's a great sport. I mean, it seems like the masks aren't really hurting the kids at all. They don't mind. They're used to it from last year, and it's definitely growing. I think in the area, you got the whole bump, set, and spike going on.
In girls soccer, I noticed Masco now has won 8 straight games. They're 14-2. So Masco's obviously they're always competing well in all the sports, but their girls soccer program, which has traditionally been a strong program, apparently still very strong here in 2021.
And the boys team undefeated still. They took down previously unbeaten Essex Tech in their last go at it. 5-0 was that game. I think it was closer than the score suggested. 2-0 game at the half. But Masco's 15-16-0 now, something like that. They got 2 left against Swampscott and Marblehead, so very good chance to run the table there and kind of lock up that top seed.
Gloucester's been really.
Go ahead, Nick. I'm sorry.
I was going to say Gloucester boys. They clinched the NEC South last week, or whatever it's called now. What's it called? I know the North is the Dunn.
Lynch.
Yeah.
NEC Lynch Division last week. They beat Winthrop and Salem on back-to-back days, and they're rolling right now. They got 7 straight wins, 5 of them by shutout. They kind of started off the season kind of a helter-skelter, up and down team, a lot of points, a lot of goals both ways, but they've really tightened things up as the season went on. They're playing a lot more defensive, and it's been working for them. And they got a big one. Monday night they played Marblehead, but they got a big crossover game on Thursday night. Beverly's coming into Newell Stadium, and that's been a really competitive match the last few years with those 2 teams.
And Marblehead's been playing good soccer too. I don't know their overall record right now, but they
game the last time they played. So that'll be a good one.
Speaking of, we mentioned the Lynch Division. I was thinking before we started here today, you've got the Lynch Division in football, which is the old South Division. But in that South Division, you don't have a Swampscott and you don't have Danvers, the 2 schools that you'd associate with Dick Lynch, and rightfully so. He should have a division named after him, but You know, he was a legendary basketball coach in Swampscott, assistant football coach in Swampscott under Stan Bondalevich, and athletic director at Danvers High School for so many years. But Danvers or Swampscott are not in the Lynch Division. So whatever, in football anyways, for this year. That can change, I'm sure. Yeah. A little piece of trivia, Phil, for you.
I think, yeah, the name, I wondered if the name, because Swampscott, you know, they're the smallest school, right? So you wonder if that's a nice point they can make when they redraw. Hey, we're named, this is named after us. We need to be down there, you know, but because Coach Dembowski is always commenting every time Swampscott plays a big school on Twitter about how the NEC makes Swampscott play the big schools. But I always reply to him that the years that Swampscott plays the big schools are usually the ones they go to the Super Bowl. So I think it actually benefits them. That's just my
Right.
opinion.
And they belong there now in football, at least.
Yeah. And I've been, you know, we used to know the enrollment. Now I haven't watched enrollment in the last 5 years or so. So it'll be interesting, you know, how that is playing out from school to school.
It's actually kind of surprising. You know, Phil and I were talking about this the other day, and you know, we noticed the Beverly girls soccer, it's moved up to Division I, and you know, because I guess they're quite good, you know, population, they've always been right on the line, and it's actually killing them in the power rankings. It's kind of unfortunate because most of the schools in the NEC are in Division II. Peabody's the only fellow Division I. So, you know, Beverly goes out and plays a Masco, you know, a Danvers, and they're actually getting hurt in the points. I'd like to see the state maybe adjust that a little bit, or I think, you know, the league is feeling the squeeze a little bit of having lost classical and English when it comes to not having those Division I opponents. I think, you know, it's not being rated the way that they hoped. So that is kind of an unforeseen issue there, at least with the girls soccer. I've noticed that the NEC power seeding seemed to be a little bit lower than I'd expect. And I think that's part of the reason why for some of these teams.
Well, I think that certainly translates into football as well, where you know, you have a conference in the NEC where there are teams in 4 different divisions, you know, Peabody and Beverly in Division II, and then you have Swampscott in Division 5. I suppose Saugus might be even Division 6, right? For the teams that play Saugus.
They might be in Winthrop too. I'm not sure what Winthrop and Salem are.
So I had one person, Salem's Division 5 with Gloucester, I want to say. You know, I had one person say to me, this could be the undoing of conferences if they want to keep it like this, because what's the incentive for a Peabody, let's say, to play some of these other conference schools that are so much lower? They're not going to gain anything out of it, win or lose. It's great for the other schools. You know, if you're a Division 5 team playing a Division 2, that works great in the eyes of the power seeding and all. But if you're a Peabody or a Beverly, you don't gain much from a win over a Division 5 opponent, which is crazy to me. I mean, I look at, had Beverly beaten Swampscott this past weekend, you know, you're beating a 6-0 team, an unbeaten team. And they really wouldn't have gained that much. It wasn't much difference, win or lose, in the standings to them, which is kind of nuts. And you wonder, like, will this be the first straw in dissolving a lot of these conferences, because you're just going to want to play teams in your own, you know, bracket in terms of size of school and division and things like that. You're going to seek out other opponents that same size as you are to help with your own rankings.
Well, I agree totally. And I think even the non-league games, like, I mean, if you're, you know, just for instance, if you're Beverly girls, you've no incentive to play any non-league games against anybody that's not in Division I, because it's just going to hurt you.
Right.
And I remember back the very first year of the football power seedings, and you know, the football formula was very simple back then, right? The very first year, you got 12 points if you beat a team in a higher division. I think it was 10 in your division. And if you beat a team in a lower division, I think you only got 8 points.
8 points, right.
And that only lasted a year. They got rid of that because of the reasons Phil said. And, you know, it went to every game you won, you got 10, no matter what. And then if it was a higher division or I think Division I, you still got that 12-point bonus. So I think, you know, if there's something like that 8-point deal in this formula, they really need to tweak that. Every win should be worth what it's worth, whether it's a low, you know, you shouldn't penalize a high division team for winning a low division league game. That's not right.
In a way, now, I know we have a couple minutes left, but look at Swampscott now. Would they be getting penalized? I mean, because they're a lower division with a very good record. Are they getting, you know, does it benefit them to be well, it would benefit them to be a good team in a lower division, right? I guess that's the strength of, for
Yeah.
them anyway, point wise, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you're have a good record in the lower league you're in, and if the majority of your opponents are above you division wise, that's only going to benefit you.
So I guess I spun it around. So I asked I know what I was asking, but I guess what I'm saying is, so if you like the case in point though, if you're the Northeastern Conference, having a team with Swampscott, which has a great football program, doesn't help the conference, right? I mean, that's a crazy way to look at it, right?
Else.
No,
Right.
I mean, just to use Beverly as an example, they got much more out of beating a terrible Haverhill team to open the season than they did out of a 1-point game against an unbeaten Swampscott team on Saturday. And that's because Haverhill's Division 1, even though Swampscott, a Division 5 team, would pretty easily beat Haverhill, it doesn't matter. And that's a tweak of this system. I mean, I realize that we're never going to have a perfect system. It's just never going to happen. But this does make you stop and think like, well, why would we play, team X? We should be playing team, above us, or at least at our same level.
Well, it's the same thing with Beverly. They beat Danvers earlier, right? And Danvers is a lower division, so Beverly didn't get anything out of that. That's a huge rivalry game for them, and now it's kind of meaningless. I mean, they beat them and they moved down in the rankings, I'm pretty sure.
Well, Danvers is another good example. I mean, they lose this week, they're going to be sitting there at 3-5, and they might still be a top 10 team based on. I mean, take Salem for instance, right? Peabody is going to potentially beat Salem. Salem's got 4 wins. They're 4-3. It's not like they're over or anything, but Salem's opponent value is so bad. I mean, Salem right now has a winning record. I'm looking at it. They have a winning record and a negative overall power rating. I don't know how that works. And the one thing about this formula, I do miss the old formula where you got points and then you divide it by the number of games. This negative decimal point stuff, people don't understand it. And I don't like that part of it. What is the formula? Why is it not simple and public? I mean, you would think
I would go so far, Willie, as to say if they somehow beat Peabody this weekend and they improve to 5-3, they're still not getting it because of that.
I mean, I would think they'd get Boku points by beating Peabody, but I mean, they'd have to leapfrog 13 spots or something. I mean,
that's what I mean.
Yeah, and I mean, not for nothing, and I know the opponents are very different, but if Salem was to be 5-3 and not get in, and Danvers was to be 3-5 and get in, that tells me there's something wrong.
And Cooks, you mentioned it. I mean, Manchester Essex lays the wood to Minuteman. Granted, we know Minuteman is down this year, but to lose points because of that, and they're in the same bracket, that doesn't make a lot of sense either.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. And I think, Gloucester's been a little too high too, because of they've played teams with a bunch of good records. They're only, going before the Peabody game, they were only ranked 24th, only 8 spots out of a playoff spot at 1-5. And because, Malden Catholic, Hamilton Wenham kind of kept winning games, but, Malden Catholic, Swampscott, those weren't really competitive games, and they're kind of getting points for that for some reason. I don't know. I don't get it.
But it is interesting to note that you need, at least in football, you need to have at least 3 wins to get into the playoffs.
Well, and the other thing is it's only 16 teams. So like if you're in one of these other sports, right, and you're getting hurt on your power rating, well, you're still going to get in and have a chance, because there's going to be 32 teams plus everyone with a winning record. But in football, if you have a winning record and your power rating's no good, you just go home. That's it. You're out. So I never liked this thing. I'm always an opponent of getting more teams in the playoffs. I don't like the idea of a decent team not getting in. I mean, I guess there won't be any good teams that don't get in, but decent ones. I mean, it's just like every other sport, the decent teams all get in, right? And in football, that just isn't the case right now, I don't think.
Well, you mentioned Salem too. Like, I don't think anybody's going to confuse Salem with Marblehead.
Right.
But they are working to build their program. And how do you do that? You play teams that you feel like you match up well against in non-league competition, and you win those games. You get good feeling around the team. Maybe you get more kids saying, hey, I want to go to Salem High. I want to stay in town. I want to play football. That should almost, I don't want to say be rewarded with a playoff berth, but there should be something at the end of it in terms of, hey, you know what? Great job, guys. Here's what we got. Not like, well, yeah, you're 5-3, or you're 4-4, but you know what? You're gonna have a consolation game against, Boston Latin or something. That doesn't seem right either.
Well, I gotta watch the clock here, so we'll have to cut it off right here, but obviously a good topic we can bring back up. The clock, the watch, yeah. So we'll have to stop here. And gentlemen, we will talk again soon. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Bill.